Well, here we are. We just, even though actually technically this is not the first sort of thing we're doing under this series called Your Best Summer Yet, if you go on YouTube or if you go on Spotify, you can go listen to the first one. We did that, and we did a recording for that, and we will do for the rest of this series. That'll just take place all of July. The rest will be on YouTube or go to Spotify if you prefer to listen just to audio because you're going for a walk, something like that. Will be the rest of this. And so really what this is all about is really just kind of revisiting the series we did at the end of last year and the beginning of this year called Thriving in Community. And it's just a refresher. We figured it's really good because sometimes, I don't know if you're anything like me, I can be just sort of like learn a lot, I can glean a lot, I can gain a lot, I can apply a little, and then I go to the next thing and kind of like forget most of the stuff that I was applying and gleaning and all that. And then I go on to the next thing and I know the next thing. And then sometimes months, days, years later, it's like, oh yeah, that thing was really good. I probably should have practiced it a little longer. And so we just really felt into summer it'd be really good. Here's an opportunity to sort of quickly revisit the Thriving in Community and just how we can apply it through the month of July and August. And hopefully, as we move on into the fall and continue this sort of thing. Because again, it's easy to get caught up into the next thing and just be kind of enveloped in that for a while. So, as we go into summer is, full of, especially if you have kids and they come out of school, changes of routines, schedules sometimes change up. I've already felt that. Both my kids are out of school. One is here, one went to Saskatoon with my parents. And the routine in the morning all of a sudden is far less hectic. And as much as I'm loving it, I'm kind of missing it because that routine sometimes helps me out in my day. And I think it was last week, it was this week, Courtney and I were doing something and we were thinking like, man, it's not Friday, it's Wednesday. We're just sort of missing out, like what's the heck happened? We still got half of a week left. And so I think it's really good if we just started going through this to start thinking about how we can apply some of this, especially as our routines can be a little different, as we can be busier, we can be a lot less busy, just really depending upon what's going on in your life. So, let's revisit the 4 ingredients talked about needed in the soil of building good community. They are joy, attachment love, or hesed, group identity, healthy correction. Now we got a lot of this from the work of Dr. Jim Wilder. We really springboarded off the book he wrote with Michael Hendricks called The Other Half of Church. And a lot of this is not only looking through the Bible, looking through Christian history, but also looking at some of the latest developments of neuroscience, understanding our brain. Because our brain actually plays a huge part in growing character and maturity in being really what we call followers of Jesus and mature followers of Jesus. But what happens is we spend a lot of time, and this is not a bad thing, it's when we weigh it out too much to one side becomes not so great. We spend a lot of time on what's called left brain practices, which is more like transfer of information and cognitive back and forth, which is good and plays an important part, but sometimes at the detriment of the right relational side. And I think that's a really interesting thing because in my experience of growing up in Christianity, we talk a lot about relationship, but we talk a lot about the cognitive side of things and miss out there's so much relationship is developed on that right side of the brain and developing the practices that help do that. And these 4 ingredients are really important in that and actually happen on that right side of the brain. So as we start into this, we've recorded already, they'll come out on Sundays where we'll do a little bit on attachment love, group identity, and healthy correction. It'll come out one every Sunday till the month of June. But today we're going to talk about joy. Joy is fuel for the brain. Our brain runs better on joy. Now, here's some of the things that I think is really important that we define when it comes to joy. One, joy isn't necessarily that intense happiness. I mean, it can't be, but it's not necessarily that. And joy can be something we feel with some things, but sometimes those are pseudo-joys. And a lot of the joy that we learned that really affects our brain well is what's called relational joy. And how we build some of the relational joy is we built through things like practices of gratitude, having joy memories and really remembering the people that are involved in those joy memories. And this one here where it was kind of put by a Dr. Alan Shore, who is a neuroscientist. He said, joy marks on the brain when we start to see the sparkle in someone's eye when they're happy to be with us. They're happy, and it's the joy we feel when we see that. Now, I don't know about you. I kind of look at it this way. When I think joy, and just in probably its purest form, I think of my kids at a certain age, definitely not this one, but at a certain age, when you'd pick them up from school, daycare, and they'd see you, and they'd get excited. And it didn't matter all the rules and the protocols, whatever was in between you and them didn't matter. They just wanted to be with you. They got excited. They would see at the other end of the field, running down, yelling, Dad, Dad, Mom, Mom, whoever it is, so excited. That's joy. Now, when they're teenagers, you see a moment of that, then they realize, oh, we gotta look aloof, right? We can't let the joy spill out too much because that makes me uncool in front of my peers. But you kind of notice, you missed the little kid part, but you kind of notice it a little bit. Joy plays this important part. And so that's a wonderful, I think, for me, just remembers what joy looks like. But joy also really plays an important part in fuel for the brain. One, when you experience that joy, it's a good feeling. It can set you for the day. It can set you so much in the moment. It can, and I've experienced this, sometimes when maybe the day hasn't gone so well and a moment like that happens, still it's not like somehow the day and all the heaviness or whatever's happened has disappeared, but all of a sudden it feels a little lighter. If it felt like a dark day, it feels just a little brighter. And it starts to fuel our brain. It literally fuels our brain. Now, joy plays a huge part in what's called returning to baseline. Or how we've sort of shared the idea of when we experience big emotions, it's the ability to return to joy or remain ourselves while experiencing those big emotions. Now, if you remember, these were the 6 big emotions that you can register specifically on the right side of the brain. The right side of the brain, once again, it's actually it's faster than the left side. So we feel these emotions faster than cognitive thought. I don't know if everyone's experienced this, where sometimes maybe you realize what emotion you're feeling before you registered in your own self. Oh, hey, I feel fear. And it's already there. It's really, really apt when we use the word triggered, because it sort of happens before we realize it's happening. We're responding to that emotion in our brain before we realize we're truly responding to it. But it's these 6 emotions: anger, shame, fear, disgust, despair, sadness. And again, it's about coming back to baseline. When joy becomes a part of our brain, the joy is not something that eliminates emotion. Doesn't eliminate all that. It doesn't remove any of that. What it does is they use the word quiet. Simply, it allows us to remain ourselves as we are experiencing these emotions, but also how to healthily process these emotions that are going on. Courtney and I took Addison to Inside Out 2. I'm not going to spoil anything, I think. But if you've seen, you kind of see it in the first one as well. And you see Joy as the main character in both Inside Out movies. And both kind of have a similar thing where basically the idea is when Joy learns its really important role, it's not to block the other emotions. It's not to bar them from the control panel from touching it at all. It's about meeting that emotion at the same time so that emotion does its job, because these emotions actually have a place they can do their job. Joy plays a part of allowing the emotion to do its job and not take complete control over everything. So, as I said before, joy very much is relational. It's the spark we see in someone's eye when they are happy to be with us. It's also the feeling we feel when we're happy to be with that person. Faces play a huge role in this. You know, we say the sparkle in the eye. It might be the smile on the face. It might be just a body language or even what's said that just sort of like, oh, you're happy to be with me, and our brain starts to register that. One of the things that we can do is we can look through the Bible and see how important faces play. In fact, when we look at some translations, some translation choices, there's a lot of times when we can look at it where they says face, because that's one of the best equivalents to the translation. But sometimes, to sort of help us understand what's meant, because obviously language changes over time, sometimes it is translated as smile or presence. Because face was the idea of being face to face, presence. Great band, which I'd like to see face to face. But also, face to face is a brilliant. When we're in front of people, Aaron's coming with me. When we're in front of people, we feel that relation. Face plays a huge part of that. I mean, we could probably, and I hate to bring this up, hopefully we can rip this Band-Aid off. Back in the pandemic, as much as Zoom and all that stuff was very helpful to see faces, even that was like, this is okay, but wasn't it great when we could see someone's face? Because there's something in the joy that happens with us. We're happy to have technology that can aid us in that, but it sure felt good to see that person face to face. Well, throughout the Bible, that is things that happen, things like in Numbers. The Lord bless you and keep you. The Lord make his face shine on you and be gracious to you. And the Lord turn his face towards you and give you peace. This is a joy move. We can go into the New Testament. For God, who said, let light shine out of darkness, make his light shine on our hearts, to give us the light of the knowledge of God's glory displayed in the face of Christ. Jesus, I think, is one of the most important faces in history, because it's the face that we start to see the presence of God through. And God felt it was really important that we have that face. And it's not just a concept, but something deeper, something more important. I actually think this is something that's so communicated through the Gospels. And we may not get a lot of references to faces in the Gospels, but we can start to use our imagination in the interactions and the dialogue. It can come out in the narrative, and one of my personal favorites is John 21. After the resurrection, Jesus would meet a few of the disciples on the shore of Sea of Galilee. They've been fishing all night, they caught nothing. They don't realize at first who he is. He says, hey, put the net on the other side. They do, and they catch like all of the fish. In that moment, they realize, oh, it's Jesus. And Peter, pulling the ultimate child seeing their parent in daycare move, jumps from the boat into the water, runs to shore. That's a joy move right there. I think he's happy to be with Jesus. He's happy to see Jesus. In that moment, they meet with Jesus. They have breakfast around a fire. And then this exchange happens. Verse 15. When they had finished eating, Jesus said to Simon Peter, Simon, son of John, do you love me more than these? Yes, Lord, he said. You know that I love you. Jesus said, feed my lambs. Again, Jesus said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? He answered, yes, Lord, you know that I love you. Jesus said, take care of my sheep. The third time he said, Simon, son of John, do you love me? Peter was hurt because Jesus asked him a third time, do you love me? Now, I just want to stop right there. I feel like I love the fact that this is included, that Peter was hurt. I'm guessing, and this is just what I'm really seeing, especially as we go through this, that maybe some shame came out in that moment. Maybe some sadness. Maybe even disgust. The very real emotions that I think probably were present. I know if it were me, I'd probably be present for me if I were Peter. Peter's response is, Lord, you know all these things. You know that I love you. And Jesus said, feed my sheep. Now, I know there's no reference to a face there. But there's something I think Jesus is saying he's happy to be with him. Because he invites him back in. He invites him back on the mission and back on the journey, back in the friendship, back into the relationship. With even responsibility. That so could have communicated, I'm happy to be with you. When I imagine it, I can't imagine he's looking mad, stern. I feel like there's a softness in his face. And that this is a joy move. Some of it I also get when I think of and apply and overlap Jesus is telling of the parable of the prodigal son. Where the father sees his son coming back down the road, and the father is the one who pulls the ultimate kid getting picked up by a parent in a daycare move, and that he runs to the son and embraces him. It speaks so much to the character of God and Jesus at this moment. And I overlay that characteristic in that when he says, feed my sheep, there's a joy moment there. It's in his body language. The thing is that I think too often, I think I've made the mistake here, we spend too much time relating to Peter in that moment. And we might, because it's easy to. But the point isn't about the relation to Peter. The point is the beautiful joy and grace of Jesus. That's the take-home point. And the joy that I can only imagine Peter experienced. So, the summer's upon us. How do we practice this idea of joy? One of the things we want to encourage everyone to do is go through the Gospels. Go through all 4. Go through 3, go through 2, pick one. Read it. Find an audio version you like. If reading it becomes difficult, while you're cutting the lawn, play it. going for a walk, playing it. Find dramatic readings of it. I really enjoy those. If you're more visual, go watch the Lumo Project. Notice the moments where Jesus is happy to be with people. And take note. When Jesus asked Matthew to follow him, Zacchaeus to come down from the tree. Mary, when she anoints his feet. Martha, when he interacts with her when she's angry about Mary. Think about how it might have been the idea of that blind Bartimaeus. Maybe one of the first things he saw was the joy of Jesus, who allowed himself to be interrupted. So many moments. Take note. Then ask the Holy Spirit to allow us to experience that for ourselves. Not just to be a story we read, but something that we can see Jesus continues to do to this day. That Jesus is happy to be with us. I'm going to encourage you this, and I'm going to tell you this as somebody who resists this far too much. Write it down. Record a voice memo. Put it down somewhere on your phone, piece of paper. Find a thing that works. To be just reminded of it. Reminded of how you believe Jesus' face would have looked in some of those moments that you're reading. And as you're writing down, start a gratitude moment. Just make a list of things you're thankful for. Gratitude is such a key point to joy. Take time when you wake up in the morning, write one thing down. Maybe it's the great coffee that you're drinking this morning. My gratitude from about a week ago, we were at my parents' house. They don't have good coffee. And my gratitude was, I'm really happy for the coffee I have at home. There was a lot of extra cream in that coffee. Whatever it is. A gift you receive. And in that same moment, collect joy memories. Or I'm going to say it this way, because I know when I first started doing this joy memories, I felt like the joy memories would sound like overwhelming, because I thought I had to pick really significant stories. And when I just said, hey, just tell stories that I like, that happened to me. I'm like, oh, hey, that's usually a joy story. Because I just it makes me feel good thinking about it. It makes me feel great sharing it and almost reliving it again. Find reasons to get together with each other, showing the joy to be with, and tell each other stories of joy. In fact, we're going to do that in just a couple minutes. This is the fair warning, so you can start thinking of a story you might want to share around the table. It's a good story, simple story, doesn't have to be long. You share stories, joy memories. Past joys can impact present realities. Tell the stories. Last week, I got to play with a friend, and it's maybe been 14 or 15 years since we played music together. We used to play music together all of the time. It was amazing. It was so great to just hear his voice and hear his guitar as we played together. It brought many joy memories back of ridiculous things that we got into. But it was such a great moment. It still impacted me right now. Another joy memory that I really loved didn't start off as a really joy memory. It's just gotten more joyful at the time. A couple of years ago, Joe and I were in Florida. He had COVID, so we had to stay longer. As we're coming home, and we got to drop off the rental car. And Courtney and Addison had left the week before, and she had just mentioned, I saw where the rental car drop-off is. It's right by the airport. I can't remember how she described it, but how in my head was not at all how she meant it. So I had this idea, this is where I was going to be. We went up, we're going to where, I think it's right here. She said it was right here. We drive by, we're right out of the airport again, and totally missed it. I'm like, okay, I totally know I didn't see it. So I'm a little frustrated. We got to get back onto like kind of a little highway thing, circle back, enter into the airport again. And I'm like, hey, Joe, we got to find this sign. Like, okay. So we're in there again, we're going, I'm on this one lane, and all of a sudden I saw the the sign, and it is on the other side of the lanes. There's no way I'm going to make it. So I got to go back through the airport again, but I feel good this time because I know where the sign is. So we do the same thing, got to pull out, back kind of on the highway, circle around again, and I say to Joe, third time's the charm. So we get there. I know where it's coming up. I get in the right lane. I go into the parking structure where it is. We go through the whole thing, and all of a sudden, to my horror, I realize I know this because this is how we left when we first got here 2 weeks ago. We are leaving the airport again, and I've missed the sign for the rental company. And I say to Joe, because I'm frustrated, like, I don't know what's going on. I missed the sign. Where is it? He says, the turd, I saw it. I'm like, that is no longer helpful information. You could have said something. So we go out, we join again into the highway, back into again, and Joe from the back seat says, I guess fourth time's the charm. Hey, Dad? Yes, it is. I laugh now about that. I considered leaving him in Orlando at that point. We made it, in case you didn't know the story. But there's a joy moment in that. And I love it because I can picture my son. I can picture him at 13 years old or 12 years old, I guess. And it's a great moment that brings me joy even as I remembered writing it down, thought about it, and shared it right now. I hope it brought you joy. It definitely brought me joy. So right now, maybe take 6 or 7 minutes. Someone share a quick story. Like, let's try to all, if we can, if we feel comfortable. It could be something as simple as, like the first story I shared with where a friend got to hang out and play some music. It was a good time. Or something a little more elaborate, like the second story, whatever it might be. Try to keep it simple. Let's take 5 or 6 minutes. Let's practice sharing joy with one another right now. And Mila will come back after it about that time and share with us and lead us in some communion. So go ahead. If you're watching on YouTube, if you're with someone, share a joy moments with them. If you're not, try to maybe, if you feel comfortable, you can throw it in the comment section. Or if you want, you can just make sure to remember that joy, and sometime during the day when you do see someone, you don't even warn them, just tell them the story and share some joy that way.